Joining us now, Nick Freitas. Nick is a House of Delegates member from Culpeper. He's a Republican. He's one of 3 candidates running for U.S. Senate. That'll be decided not in a crazy convention, but in a regular, good old-fashioned primary where people come up and show up to vote.
Dude, that would be a fascinating convention. Seeing a speech from Bishop Jackson followed up and topped by a speech from Nick Freitas. You want to talk about bringing people to their feet. That would be a fantastic thing to watch.
Yeah, and Jackson would be the nominee. So, look, I am in favor of primaries, and based on this convention that just went on and the shenanigans, that is the poster child for primaries as far as I'm concerned. I like primaries because you go out and you vote, right? And you have to run in the area that you're going to run on in the general. So that's just me, though, right? A lot of people like conventions. I don't, because you get the shenanigans you got in the 6th District. But Nick Freitas, hey, I just want to make a disclaimer here. The Corey Stewart campaign put out a meme the other day on social media saying that I had endorsed Corey Stewart. I have not. That is a lie.
Fake news.
Fake news. They did take some of the quotes I had in the story by Patrick Wilson in the Richmond Times to smash piece those together. It was very cleverly done. It's clever. I always, clever and creative always gets a retweet from me, but in this case, fake news, right? I've made no endorsement in this race, but I do have Stewart as the favorite going in with about 25 days. Anyway, joining us now, Nick Freitas. Hey, Nick, you're with John and Andrew. Good to have you with us, sir.
Hey, great to be on. Great to talk with you, John and Andrew.
What'd you think of this convention in the 6th District?
Well, obviously there was a lot of problems that came out of it with respect to some of the organization and whatnot, and clearly various camps were pretty upset with things that were made with respect to the 6th District Committee. I kind of, look, I've always liked conventions, but whenever we get this sort of battle that's going on with respect to the rules and how votes are going to be counted and everything else, it just feeds into this narrative that conventions are too easy to manipulate, and I think that's unfortunate. Again, I think at the end of the day, everything was hammered out. I was at the 6th District Convention. There was a lot of energy there. It was fun to network. You get a chance to see people you haven't seen in a while, and I think people are unified behind our candidate going forward. So I think at this point, it's behind us. Let's just focus on November.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think, right? The whole thing's behind you, and so let's do that. Now, let's get to your race. And I know we had you on a couple of days ago. We talked about some of the key issues that are facing us now. Let's get to politics. And a lot of people looking at this, Nick, like myself, and try to figure out a Nick Freitas pathway to victory, right? You don't have a base. Jackson's got an evangelical group that are going to vote for him. He's going to get 20% if he spends a dime or he spends $1 million. He's going to get 20%. And Corey Stewart has never really stopped campaigning. He's been campaigning for how long, Andrew?
2 years.
2 years, 36 months. Yeah. I mean, it's just a continual campaign in perpetuity. And, he's also going to get a big vote out of his county, obviously, and he's got the flag thing and the statues and all that. So how do you put together a coalition on June 12th to be the nominee?
Well, I think the idea that we don't have a base is inaccurate. If we didn't have a base, it's hard to see how do we out-fundraise Corey Stewart, and not by a small margin. We raised about $340,000. We raised that from the average donation was $67. We only had one person completely maxed out at that point. Now that's obviously changed now as people have seen us as a viable candidacy. But to have over 5,000 individual donors and to have the average donation be $67 and to out-fundraise Corey Stewart by $100,000 to include having much more money on hand than he had. I'm sorry, you don't do that without a base. You don't do that without people that are excited about your candidacy. I think the other thing, and look, I don't put too much stock in this, but when you look at the various polls that have been conducted by Republican committees, Republican conventions, conservative organizations, these are the people that are going to vote in a primary. And when you look at that, we've won every single straw poll that has been done all across the Commonwealth by double digits. And so I think the idea that we don't have a base simply because we haven't been running as long as Bishop Jackson or as long as Corey Stewart is inaccurate. We do have a base. We were able to build a lot quicker because the base isn't so much around just an individual candidate. It is around a particular message within the Republican Party that I think many people feel has been missing for a while now. So, I think we do have a strong base, and I think our fundraising numbers prove it. I think our ground game proves it. I think our straw poll results prove it. If we had a public poll that we could be referencing right now, that would obviously be great. But unfortunately, one hasn't been conducted since, I think, January.
Nick, this is Andrew V. Horn. That's a very impressive fundraising number. How does it break down in-state contributions versus out-of-state contributions?
I actually don't know off the top of my head. I want to say it was somewhere around 50-50. But I'd have to go back and look at the numbers. The interesting part was all of us have recognized that if we want to beat Tim Kaine's fundraising ability, you have to nationalize the race. So clearly we put all of our focus into Virginia. We had a lot of people out of state that did contribute after my floor speech went viral about the Second Amendment, because people all over the country realize that as a United States Senator, I'm going to be casting votes on their Second Amendment rights, whether they live in Virginia, Texas, Oklahoma, Wyoming. Ultimately, at that point, they want the Second Amendment protected. They see me as the person that can do it. We know Tim Kaine can fundraise. He's got about $10 million in the bank right now. The good news is that in this election, most of the out-of-state money for Democrats is going to go to other races because they've got to try to protect those Democrats that are in seats that Donald Trump won their states. But in Virginia, we have to be able to nationalize this race, and I think I'm the only candidate so far that has demonstrated that I have the ability to do that.
So, Nick, Corey Stewart campaigned and did a press conference outside of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, NRSC, protesting whatever he was protesting. I don't even remember what it was. It didn't seem to amount to anything. But if you're doing that and then he's the nominee, how is he going to get them to give him any money?
Here's the problem, right? And John, you know this. From the moment I started running, people have been trying to get me to attack Corey Stewart, and I've really tried to resist doing that. I don't like going after fellow Republicans. I don't like us beating each other up in the primary. Corey Stewart, on the other hand, has just relentlessly come after me, and he's come after me over the stupidest of things. I mean, he's mocked the ethnicity of my last name. He's mischaracterized my voting record. He's flat out lied about whether or not I voted for Donald Trump. So I'm tired of it. Let's face it. The last time Corey Stewart went to D.C. peddling conspiracy theories, Donald Trump fired him. Okay, and he's made this huge deal about how he's the Trump guy and how he led Trump's campaign in Virginia. Go talk to any senior advisor that was working for Donald Trump at the time and ask them what they think about what Corey Stewart did for Donald Trump's chances in Virginia. Because the whole reason why he was fired was not just because he went up there and made a protest in Washington, D.C. It was because Corey Stewart was constantly putting his own political ambitions ahead of what the president needed from him in Virginia. And so for him to be able to go and campaign on this idea like he's Trump's guy is absolutely ridiculous, and the facts bear that out.
Well, what he didn't help in Virginia. I mean, we ended up losing by 5. It was not helpful. And so I've said this story on the air many times. I guess it's worth repeating now that you've got a serious primary coming up. Corey Stewart decided to Republican National Committee and protest. I don't even know what he was protesting. He was the chairman of the Trump campaign. I was his co-chairman and spokesman for Trump in Virginia. And I don't even really remember what he was doing. He said they weren't supporting him or something. And that was just at the time where Kellyanne Conway and David Bossie, who had joined the campaign as the senior leadership, were trying to reestablish a relationship with the Republican National Committee, which they needed in order to go forward and win. So all I can tell you is that as his co-chair, I got wind of it on a Sunday. And I know exactly when it was because it was halftime in a 1 o'clock Redskins game. And a couple people texted me, and I called Corey at home and said, look, here's what I heard you're doing. I don't think you should do it. The campaign doesn't want it. I've heard from people, and I think you're really playing with fire here, and it's counter to what the campaign is trying to do with the RNC. So, you know, anybody can go protest, Corey, but I don't think you should be a part of it as the chairman. I don't think it's a good idea. And he said to me, well, I'm going to go. I said, well, I'm not, and I think there's going to be consequences if you do. And he said to me right on the phone, I mean, I've said this on the air, this is no surprise. He said, well, it's going to really help me with my base, and I think I can thread the needle. That was his words. And it came back to bite him in the butt. He got fired over it by Dave Bossie that day, and they didn't tell me for 3 days. And then a senior official in New York called me. I'm not going to tell you who it is, and said, we didn't tell you because we wanted you to have clean hands in this whole thing. So, look, I mean, Corey shouldn't have done that. It was a bad move. He got fired over it. And it didn't make any sense because it was counter to what the campaign was trying to do. But that was not for the campaign. That was for Corey Stewart running for governor the next year.
And, John, can I point something out?
Yeah.
I mean, Corey loves to brag about how he's the only one that can win Northern Virginia. He's the only one that has won in Prince William County, how he's got a lock on Prince William County. Well, then here's my question. Instead of going up and doing fake protests in Washington, D.C., why wasn't he working in Prince William County, which Hillary Clinton ended up carrying by 21 points? Because if we could have got a couple more percentage points out of Prince William, it would have made a huge difference across the Commonwealth.
And what about in the 2017 race? I think most of Prince William went for the Democrats, right? Didn't the Democrats pick several seats up in the House, if I'm not mistaken?
Oh, they did. We lost a lot of good delegates in Prince William County in 2017.
Right. So, look, I mean, you got to get out there and work. But having said all that, Nick, Stewart he still has a following, especially on social media, and he's going to turn his base out, and he's going to probably get 40% again. And you're there splitting the anti-Corey Stewart vote with E.W. Jackson. So,
no, I don't think. See, that's the thing is that, there are some people that don't want Corey Stewart. And one of the reasons why I don't want Corey Stewart is, again, the guy's raised taxes multiple times within Prince William County. He's got other issues he has to deal with there. Quite frankly, if I had a voting record in the General Assembly that Corey Stewart has in Prince William County, Corey Stewart would be running a bunch of ads against me talking about what a tax hiker I am. The difference is I've never voted to raise taxes, and Corey's done it multiple times. So there's a lot of reasons why people are not just voting for me, but they're a little bit frustrated with how Corey has talked about his record, and in some cases, I think misrepresented his record. But we've got a lot of people that are excited for voting for me, again, because it's not just about an individual candidate. It is about getting back to the sort of messaging that Republicans have focused on that has allowed us to win. And we have a unique opportunity right now to meld the Reagan coalition with the Trump coalition. And it is about talking about positivity. It's about talking about the various things that this president has done with respect to tax reform, with respect to regulatory reform, with respect to foreign policy that people are excited about. And you've got some people in Northern Virginia or Virginia Beach, they don't like the way the president says it, but they sure like the results. Mm-hmm. And so we need someone. Donald Trump does not need a cheap imitation of himself in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Mm-hmm. What he needs is someone that is able to go to a variety of diverse groups and explain, look, you don't got to like the way the president says it, but let's give credit where credit is due. Let's look at the actual outcomes of the policies that he's doing. Let's look at the fact that we're actually talking about peace on the Korean Peninsula. Let's talk about the fact that jobs and businesses are moving back to the United States for the first time in decades. Let's talk about the fact that unemployment is low, work participation is up, that people are actually confident again, that they're keeping more of their own money, they can invest in their kids' education. These are all positive things that affect everybody. What the president needs right now, what the Republicans needs right now, is someone that can go and actually talk about that in a positive and relevant way to diverse groups within Virginia. And when people look at who they think can effectively do that, they're gravitating toward us.
Nick, I think you're right, and I think what happened in the 6th District is going to bode well for you. And good job on endorsing Ben Klein. You called that early. But I think what you're seeing is there's people are turning away from the phony outrage that's delivered by candidates that really don't have the moral authority to deliver the message that they are. And I think you're seeing folks look for someone who is authentic but also has the credibility to deliver their message. Corey Stewart has said if he runs against Tim Kaine, it's going to be a gutter campaign. He's going to go after his wife and kids, and nothing's off the table. And I think that turns a lot of people off. Tell us about the campaign that you would run against Tim Kaine after the primary.
Well, I think the thing that we need to understand here is, first of all, you're absolutely right. When we're talking about attacking women and children, that's not something that resonates with people. And you know what? It shouldn't resonate with people. Corey likes to talk about running the most vicious and ruthless campaign we've ever run in Virginia. I like to ask people, think back in the pantheon of American political figures about the ones you admire. Which ones would you describe as ruthless and vicious? That's not who we are as a party. We inspire people. We empower the individuals in order to accomplish things and overcome challenges. And that's the sort of thing that resonates with people. Now, am I going to go after Tim Kaine's record? Absolutely, because I fully believe that Tim Kaine's policies have actually made victims of a lot of Virginians. If you look at the people that have grown up in failing schools, if you look at the people who are being taxed more than they should, if you look at a regulatory environment that Tim Kaine supported that ran them out of business, these are all people that are frustrated with the kind of leftist philosophy that Tim Kaine has been pushing. And it has only gotten worse the longer he stayed in politics. He got a score from National Federation of Independent Business of 17. That's the same score that Elizabeth Warren had, who is an ultra-liberal from Massachusetts. So clearly Tim Kaine is completely out of touch with what Virginians expect out of their senators. And we're going to hit him on that relentlessly. But that doesn't mean we're going to attack his family. It doesn't mean that we got to attack him personally. We do have to call into question all the things that he's done over his last 30 years in politics. And I have to tell you, the other thing that we got to hit Tim Kaine up on is the fact that he colluded with Hillary Clinton in order to rig the primary process so that Hillary would be the presidential nominee for the Democratic Party. There's a lot of Democrats that are frustrated about that. There's a lot of Democrats, especially rural Democrats, who also see the problem with D.C. being the sort of people that have been there forever, that are constantly rigging the system in favor of themselves and their friends. And we can tie Tim to that because he's engaged in it. So we don't need to be vicious. We don't need to be ruthless. What we need to do is highlight the record, highlight the results of that record. How has that record hurt people and hurt Virginians? And then we have to offer an alternative. And our alternative is about empowering individuals, not empowering government programs. It's about letting them keep more of their own money. It's about when they actually have an idea that they want to put out there in the marketplace to start a business, to provide a product, to provide a service. They should not be thinking to themselves, well, if I don't have the right political connections, this is never going to work. We're going to remove those sort of regulatory barriers. We're going to remove that sort of cronyism. And when we do that, again, that resonates with people. That gets them excited again, not just about a candidacy, not just about politics. It gets them excited again about the idea that they're in control of their own destiny once again. It's not being determined for them by some political elite. And so when we do that, that is how we're going to win in November.
Nick Freitas, we're out of time. I want to thank you for being with us. What's your website?
Please go to nickforsenate.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We do regular updates. We've got a packed schedule between now and the primary, and we're looking forward to meeting as many people as we can before June 12th.
Here's a text I got from Sue in Matthews County. She says, Nick has a base. John, see the light.